There's no need to argue anymore. That's a great song. That's a great album.
What secondary school did Brian attend?
Oh, private. They didn't ship you out today. They didn't ship you to the south side for a better education. Me and you are finished. If you jumped on a bus and went down the coast road and out to the south of Dublin for education.
Oh, come on.
I don't know. I'll just go with Clontarf. Yeah. This is awful stuff. This is desperate. Turn this thing off.
The Rugby World Cup on OTB Sports Radio.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
Sexton from outside the 10-metre line. It's spinning. It looks good. Le drop de Jonathan Sexton.
Rugby World Cup on Off the Ball. Updates, analysis and opinion across all OTB channels from start to finish. This is OTB Sports Radio.
OTB Sports Radio.
All right, hello there. This is the Off the Ball Rugby World Cup show, streaming live on offtheball.com, OTB Sports Radio, and on video across all of Off the Ball's social platforms. Final whistle has just blown in Kobe, Ireland, up and running, so to speak, I suppose. Back up and running, maybe. Not the most inspiring games in the world, though. A 35-0 win against Russia, but they have the bonus point. They still look like they're finding their groove, though. The bonus point came this afternoon, but it probably arrived a little later than most people were thinking, after the hour mark. And, job done in theory, but that middle third of the game, 25 minutes at least without a score. Handling errors, 4 turnovers for Bundyaki, just a general sloppiness. Even the scrum in the second half coming under a bit of pressure, and to add to that, Joey Carberry pulling out of the game just before the match with a bit of tightness in his ankle, that injury that hampered him in the lead up to the World Cup. He missed all but really one of the World Cup warm-up matches when he got injured in that game against Italy. And then Jordy Murphy as well, having to come off in the first half, having actually played quite well, I think, when he got his start there. Only flew out to Japan on Sunday. Looks like it's a little rib injury for him. We're going to have to wait and see and hear from Joe Schmidt a little bit later on in the day to see how that is. But who knows, if that is a bit more serious and maybe Jordy Murphy's World Cup is over, who comes in then? Are they looking at bringing in someone like Devin Toner? But then again, are they looking for someone who's going to try play 8 as well? Tommy O'Donnell, maybe Jack O'Donoghue and Munster might be looking down at their phones over the next while. We're going to be looking back over this match for the next while, but Mike Ross, he's joining us on the line. If you have any questions as well for Mike, get them into us. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter, or you can leave us a comment on any of our social streams. We'll try get some to Mike throughout this show. And as usual, our rugby coverage on Off the Ball brought to you by Vodafone. Team of us, everyone in. So 35-0 win for Ireland against Russia. We'll run you through some of the scores. 2 minutes in, perfect start for Ireland. Rob Kearney runs in after a lovely one of those Joe Schmidt power plays, those Joe Schmidt trick moves. Luke McGrath out to Jordy Murphy, and McGrath just kind of looping around the back, trying to just drag a couple of defenders with him. And Jordy Murphy, all the Russian players went for him. And it was back inside to Rob Kearney, who ran in under the in towards the corner. Johnny Sexton adding the conversion. Peter O'Mahony then with a lovely try on 13 minutes. And at that stage, 2 tries for Ireland at 13 minutes in. It looked like it was going to be a really, really comfortable afternoon. Grubber through from Johnny Sexton, and Peter O'Mahony was straight up. It looked straight off the training paddock as well, through that gap and under the post, and Sexton converting once again. Then Ireland had to wait a little bit longer. Russia went down to 14 men for a sin bin, and that led up to Rhys Ruddock's try. Lovely bit of forwards work in the end, though. Rhys Ruddock, who's Ireland's best player today by a mile, and was the official man of the match as well, getting over the line after some good forwards work. John Ryan giving him a final shove to get over there as well. Johnny Sexton converted that, and that was pretty much his last action of the game. He came off at half-time. Hard to know just yet if it is a precaution just because of Joey Carberry's injury before the game and the captain's run yesterday, and knowing that Johnny Sexton needs to be wrapped up essentially. Jack Carty came on at half-time, and then Ireland had a long time to wait, 61 minutes before they got in again. And there was, even watching out here in the off-the-ball offices, there was a lot of worry. Are Ireland going to get that bonus point? In the end, they did. Andrew Conway, after a lovely chip over the top from Jack Carty. Keith Earls collected it back inside to Andrew Conway, who sprinted in under the post. And then 4 minutes from time, Gary Ringrose got in on the act to make it 35-0. Jordan Larmour making the break out to Earls, then worked it back inside into the middle, and Gary Ringrose running it in. So 5 tries, 5 conversions. Texting here from Mark O'Callaghan, job done but not great. That's probably the best way to describe it. And Mike Ross is joining us on the line there. Mike, I don't know, did you hear me describing things there? That first text, job done but not great, is that ultimately the kind of the nub of it?
I think that's a good summary of it. and we got the 5 points. We padded out our points differential, but I think we left a lot behind us too. Conditions didn't look great for handling. There's a lot of knock-ons. Seemed like the ball was a bar of soap at times, but we made some errors.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to think about even going ahead towards the Samoa game, because earlier on in the week we were talking to Alan Quinlan, and he was saying that regardless of what happens really over this game against Russia and the game against Samoa next week, even if it's 2 bonus point wins, 2 comfortable wins, the fact that you're beaten by Japan last week, that's always going to be hanging over you heading into the quarter-final. It's that one question that you can't answer over these 2 games.
No, but there's not much you can do about it now, I mean, can't go short of a time machine. We're not going to change that result, so we just have to onwards and upwards, as the saying goes. I mean, South Africa lost to Japan last year, or last World Cup, and they did quite well in the end, but yeah, it certainly put us into a dogfight in the pool we didn't need.
Is it worrying? I mean, Ireland started quite well this afternoon. They got those couple of early tries, and that should be the settler. That should be what you move on from, and just kind of the tension eases up. But it just seemed as the game wore on, Ireland got more tense themselves, and you went from Rhys Ruddock getting that 3rd try before half-time on 35 minutes up until the 60th minute, when Ireland all of a sudden they stopped. It looked like they were, they weren't getting the ball wide as much. They were knocking on the ball a lot more. Even a couple of scrums started to go against them, and they just started to tense up that little bit all over again, didn't they?
Yeah, because they would have been aware they needed to get the 4th try, so they're trying to force things maybe a little bit too much. And when that happens, mistakes tend to compound mistakes. When they got the 4th try, things kind of opened up. They played a bit better. They added a bit more, a couple extra after that. I thought Rhys Ruddock had a superb game. But yeah, look, we have the 5 points. We haven't conceded any, so next job is Samoa. Yeah,
I suppose we'll move on to a couple of good things, and we might get back to a few more Joe Schmidt work-ons a little bit later on. But as you said, Rhys Ruddock there, that was the name that jumped out. Man of the match, and I think an undisputed man of the match, really. 11 carries, most yards out of any of the forwards, 48 metres. I think it was only Gary Ringrose, Andrew Conway and Rob Kearney actually got more yards with the ball in hand. 14 tackles. The only Irish player to go over double figures. Granted, most of the other Irish players didn't necessarily need to be over double figures, but 14 tackles and none missed from Rhys Ruddock. Is he putting himself into contention possibly for a first choice place?
I would say so, based on that performance, certainly. I know Rhys a long time, and people don't realise how massive engine he has. I remember doing pre-season training, and there was a 1 kilometre fitness test, which is 10 lengths of the pitch, and Rhys did it in about 3 minutes 25 seconds, which is up there with the best times, and he's got about 20 or 30 kilos on the backs who are running that time. So he's a bit of an athletic freak, and the way he played, he's tremendously strong. He's got a massive engine, and he just works all day for you.
Down the years, he hasn't been first choice for Ireland, but he's always filled in quite regularly as a captain in the team. He's clearly someone, a player that other people look up to, and he brings people around him. And I think in that first half in particular, I think he had 10 tackles in the first half, even out of those 14 he had in total. He was the one that really stood out, and I think he was kind of dragging people around with him at times. Yeah,
and he brings a lot of options too, because Rhys can fill in at the second row. He's actually a pretty good scrummager. So I think we might have suffered a bit for his versatility at times. He's a really good blindside, but if you have him on the bench, he covers a few positions for you.
On his try as well, I suppose, from your own experience as a prop, honourable mention goes to John Ryan there for shoving him over the line when he really needed it. It looked like he'd actually been stopped kind of a couple of yards short, but he got a really good shove from John Ryan to kind of just nudge him over. And I suppose that is the kind of dirty work that guys like John Ryan or yourself down the years probably would have been expected to do.
Yeah, that's trying to add a bit of value when you can, and John worked pretty hard throughout the game. He thought he did well. He just added that little bit of Calvary arrived. Rhys looked like he was going to be held up short, and in come John and nudge him over the line, adding a bit of extra weight, and that's what you want from your tight five.
Overall, if there were a kind of handful of good things maybe you saw in that game, obviously the start was good. It looked like Luke McGrath was someone I think that impressed early on. His kicking was quite sharp in that first half in particular, with box kicks, and himself and Johnny Sexton varying it a lot as well, putting through some grubbers that worked it nicely. If there were a few things that pleased you during this performance, what were they?
Andrew Conway. I thought Andrew Conway played really well. That was a good positive. Like you said, Luke got through a good bit of work. Unfortunate about Jordy Murphy, didn't really get a chance to show what he's capable of, because he had to go off with that injury early on. And poor old CJ then had to double up. But I think looking forward to this tomorrow. There's going to be a few selection conundrums. Who's your back row? I think probably the best second row combination is more than likely James Ryan and Ian Henderson. But I would thought that Tyke Byrne put his hand up too. He was a pest. Both had a breakdown, and he ripped the ball free more than a couple of times in mauls and contact situations. Yeah,
Tyke Byrne was one of those players, in terms of stats anyway. He was quite active and ball in hand. I think he had a lot of carries. He was kind of up there with Rhys Ruddock in terms of carries. I'm just looking at it here now. Yeah, 14 carries. He led in the forwards, although for 24 metres, and in defence then as well. He was putting himself about, making 7 tackles. But you mentioned the back row there is the Ruddock, O'Mahony at 7, and probably CJ Stander now coming in at 8. Is that a possible contender for first choice, or if Rhys Ruddock was to be starting, would you be putting Josh van der Flier in there as well?
It's a conundrum, isn't it? I mean, because like Josh, we get with Josh as the guy who works all day and makes his tackles and just keeps going. Pete's really good to have in the line out. He picks and chooses his time to make a turnover, and he's usually pretty good at it. And plus the leadership he brings, CJ is a good man for carrying the hard traffic. But I think, three. But it is a tough one. But I suspect you're going to have. I think you might pick Rhys at 6, CJ at 8, and Pete at 7 for Smo, and see what that looks like. In terms, although actually Pete would probably be rested. Probably be Josh van der Flier will be picked at 7. Looking ahead, to think about it.
How did you rate Peter O'Mahony overall? He was someone that he's kind of got a little bit of criticism, I think, in the last week or so. He gave away a few penalties against Japan, and I think he was someone that probably needed a big game. How did you think he went today?
He made some important interjections. Like he not turned over a couple of lineouts. He was visible, ball in hand, busy around the breakdowns. I think it should be reasonably pleased with it.
Mm-hmm. Just looking at some other players, John Klein, 4 carries throughout the game, didn't pick up a yard. I know he's out there to do the kind of the tougher jobs, like getting in, clearing rucks. What did you make of his performance? And so much has been spoken as well about his role as the tight head lock, and it might be interesting maybe to just get your kind of take on what is it that you want to be seeing from the tight head lock. It's probably a niche position that we're talking about more in the last year or two. It's becoming more and more relevant, and it's something that Joe Schmidt has highlighted that John Klein is perfect for over the last month or two. So what is it that he is doing out there that Joe Schmidt is liking, and is he doing it to the right level?
Yeah, well, what you ideally want from your tight head lock, for some of the bigger guys, you want them to be an absolute weapon in the scrum. I haven't had John behind him ever, but I hear good reports about him. So he ticks that box. And then you want them to be melting people in contact and melting rucks. Now, has he been doing that so far? On a couple of occasions, yes, but I don't think he's doing it enough, as much as he'd like. And can
Devin Toner do that?
Dev?
Yeah.
Dev is more of a line-out lock, I mean, Dev, he's got the ways, he's a good tight-head scrummager. He's usually, his ruck hits are usually up among the top. His numbers are probably up in the top for hitting rucks. And he's kind of really developed his game over the last few years, whereas before he wouldn't have been, but now I would say he is. Mm-hmm. His Dev's problem has always been, I used to have it too, was ruck accuracy and hitting the right person or making the contact stick after you hit the ruck.
And was that something Ireland were doing? It seemed like Ireland were doing that particularly well in the first half, kind of leading up to Rhys Ruddock's try as well. They were getting in there and clearing a bit of space for the next ball carrier to go and attack. And is that something that they just kind of, the intensity just dropped off a little bit?
Yeah, to be fair, it did look like a sweatbox. All the close-up shots I saw, the guys were absolutely drenched. So, conditions were quite tough in there. I heard from people who were in there, it was a bit like a sauna. So it's this, when you're operating in that and you're losing, body weight through sweat and evaporation, your performance levels are inevitably going to drop a bit. So that probably could be a contributing factor.
But it is something we saw in the Japan game as well, just how jaded the Irish players looked once you kind of got into the second half. At what stage do you have to kind of put this down? Not necessarily just to the conditions, but these are the conditions that we've known Ireland were going to be facing for the last 4 years, and at some level, do you have to kind of be there and be ready to deal with them? Yeah,
and look, in fairness to Ireland, they have a very good conditioning staff. Jason Cowman's been there, 5 or 6 years now. He knows what he's about. I know they had a very hard pre-season to try and prepare for it, but I don't think it's hard to replicate those conditions when you're training at home. They're not the only team that's struggling with it. A lot of teams are struggling with it. You imagine as the tournament goes on, they acclimatise. The things should be getting better for them.
How did you think Johnny Sexton went this afternoon? I'm just seeing here on Twitter, Joe Schmidt says that it was definitely tactical when he came off at half-time. Now, it didn't look like he was needing any treatment during the first half. I would say the scare to Joey Carberry in the last day or so probably meant that they were going to get Sexton off a little bit earlier than they'd initially planned, but I think he's hinting they might give him another 60 weeks next week. Overall, what did you think of his performance?
It was he controlled the game well. A nice little poke through for Pete's try. He made his kicks. Directed the game around, made the call. So I think it was a tidy 40 minutes for him. Now, knowing him, he'd probably like to have played a bit longer. But I think he'll be pleased enough with it. But he'll have bigger challenges than that coming up.
And then, Samoa next week. I'm sure Joe Schmidt's going to be delighted. They have 9 days to prepare for that now. And, he is someone that likes to talk about the amount of days between games. We always see it, even in the Six Nations, if there's, they're playing Saturday to Sunday or Sunday to Saturday. You'll always hear him bring it up a couple of times. And obviously, the 6-day turnaround last week was something he brought up, and 4 or 5 this week. They've got 9 days now to prepare against that game against Samoa. I imagine the players are going to get a nice rest over the next couple of days. Yeah,
hopefully. One thing about my experience with Joe at the last World Cup is that the training is still quite tough. There wasn't he kept the pace up during training. So the boys will be looking forward to a bit of a break. The 9-day turnaround before Samoa. One thing Samoa have always been is enormously physical, so need to get prepared for that. I don't know what he's got planned. I saw they were training against with Kobe Steelers during the week. Mm-hmm. So I'll probably have another training session, I imagine, with another local Japanese team to get ready for it.
In terms of the schedule, I'd be interested to get your take based on kind of Ireland's experiences in 2015. 2015, you started out with Canada and Romania, the 2 games you're absolutely expected to win, and there were some good performances, ran in some tries and worked your way into it like that. And you got to Italy, then it's another step up, went through the motions a little bit before the big game of the pool against France, and it was just building up and building up and building up the whole way through, and you were kind of able to ease your way into it. But ultimately then, a week later in a quarter-final against Argentina, it looked like, that game against France had taken it out of you. Whereas this time round, it was the 2 toughest games up first. On paper, we thought anyway, the toughest game was Scotland up first and then Japan. But then you're kind of back into games you're expected to win against Russia today and Samoa next week before what you hope then is a quarter-final. From your own how did you find 2015? Would you have preferred maybe to have one of those tougher games a little bit earlier on in the pool?
Yeah, I think so. I found 2015 really tough because, as you said, it was just in matches of a steadily increasing intensity, and there wasn't really much of a break. I mean, we went from Italy, which was a tough game physically. We played, our hearts out against France, and then, everyone knows how the quarter-final went against Argentina. wouldn't have minded having a bit of a opportunity to download and rotate a bit during that, because if you were to make it all the way to the final, would have been probably 6 games of test match, incredible intensity, 6 weeks in a row. Mm-hmm. So, which is why the World Cup is so hard to win, because you don't have a large break between games usually.
Yeah, and even the way the games fell actually was probably as kind as it could have been to Ireland. I think you started out on a Saturday and had 8 days to the next one, and it was pretty much 1 week the whole way through, whereas this time around you do have a short turnaround from a game to Japan, from Japan into Russia, but on the flip side you do have a nice fine break afterwards, and that's where you're able to recharge things. Yeah,
so I think the schedule this time around is a bit kinder, if
even though you do have one game where it's a 5-day turnaround.
Yes, but it's probably against one of the weaker teams in the pool, so you can rotate a bit more.
In terms of Joey Carberry, just on the injuries, Joey Carberry and Jordy Murphy. I'll talk about Murphy in a second. Joey Carberry, though, pulled up again in the warm-up. It's 8 weeks on now, I think, since that game against Italy, and we've only really seen him get 10-15 minutes so far in the World Cup, and it's meant that Conor Murray had to come in onto the bench today. I don't think he came on in the end. I'd say Joe Schmidt was, break glass in case of emergency with him this afternoon, but you have to see him on the pitch next week against Samoa. Otherwise, Johnny Sexton's out there again. Jack Harty will have played 4 games in a row at various points. There needs to be a bit of a rest for players, and otherwise you're carrying guys like himself and Robbie Henshaw, who hasn't featured yet at all. There's a reason you're bringing a 31-man squad, is because you need to use all of those guys.
Yeah, and I think they've kept Luke on. As you said, they weren't going to bring Conor Murray on except in case of emergency. So I fully expect to see him start against Samoa next week. He'll probably play about 50, 60, and then Luke will come on. So there's a 9-day down period now, so it gives lads a chance to rest and freshen up and get ready for we need to get another 5-pointer against Samoa.
Mm-hmm. If Robbie Henshaw does come in and start next week and he has a decent game, is Bundyaki under a little bit of pressure? He was someone who actually really looked off the pace this afternoon. 4 turnovers during the game, and kind of looked like he was trying a little bit too hard, and his execution was really off, particularly in the second half. There was, trying to get in over the ball, and he's just batting it down by mistake, and running up too hard, and he's knocking on the ball again. He looked like someone who just was a little bit off the pace.
Yeah, he looked like he's trying to force things a bit. I suppose historically Joe would have kind of preferred the Gary Ringrose Henshaw axis. So I'd say if Robbie gets fit for Samoa, he'll start, and I think probably Gary will start with him, and they'll have a look at that, and then they'll make the call then, if we make it to the quarterfinals, as to who's going to be in the midfield then.
Mm-hmm. It's probably wide open as to who Ireland will be playing in the quarterfinal, because Scotland could easily beat Japan, but at the same time they could be hammered out the gate as well. You just never know with Scotland, and Ireland have put themselves into, I suppose, a much better position. They know a win probably of any kind next week, even if they don't get a bonus point, should be enough to put them through. They're back on top of the pool on 11 points, 2 ahead of Japan, but Japan, Scotland and Samoa all still have a game in hand over Ireland. So you have Japan on 9 points, Scotland on 5, and Samoa on 5 as well. Jordy Murphy, hugely disappointing for him to have to come off. Looked like a rib injury. Ribs are one of those things that they're very hard to call. Sometimes you can just play through that pain, but it is incredibly tough. And if his World Cup was to be over, if he was to miss next week's game, actually, first of all, I suppose, do you think Ireland would consider that his World Cup over?
I don't know. It depends on the nature of the injury. Ribs can be tricky things. If it's just a bit of rib cartilage, usually you can.
It's just pain, isn't it?
That. It's just painful.
Yeah.
If it's a cracked rib, that's another story. If they do have to call it, I mean, who do you bring up? Probably Tommy O'Donnell, I imagine, at this stage. Mm-hmm. Probably in pole position.
Would Jack O'Donoghue come into it? You're looking at across the back row and number 8 as well. Yeah, that is a possibility. I like Jack's been in camps before, and he's played under Joe, so he knows what to expect. I don't know if there's anyone we're missing out there who could possibly come in. Jordy Murphy actually looked like he was playing quite well up until that injury as well, which is going to be enormously frustrating for him, especially having just come off the plane a few days ago. He had that lovely ball back inside to Rob Kearney for the try when Luke McGrath put it out to him and just slipped it back in. Everyone went with Luke McGrath the second time round, and he looked like he'd started the game quite well.
Yeah, I've seen that move before. Joe likes that one. He likes to kind of manipulate space around the ruck and then send Rob Kearney is usually the beneficiary. It was like when we scored against England, I think it was 2015, some similar kind of move. So yeah, it came off well. I think it was a rib injury. I think I suspect it's just popped some rib cartilage, which will be painful, but a couple of days of rest and some treatment, and he should be okay to go. As a betting man, I would say that he'll be fit.
Yeah, and I imagine given how he missed the start of the tournament as well, he'll be doing everything he can to stay in that camp. I'm just going to read out a few texts and messages coming into us here. They seem to be along the same lines, I think. Conor Garrity saying, scrappy performance, need a huge performance next. Rod Hanna, very laboured and short on ideas, maybe the humidity and heat sapping Ireland. Although I did see a lot of reporters saying that it wasn't nearly as hot and humid in that arena as it was for the game between Scotland and Samoa the other day. Hanoi Tripper, Ireland look a bit stiff. Carl Sheehan saying another gutless Irish performance, the usual essentially. Pascal Jacob, if there's one good point, and I admit I'm grasping, it's that in 3 games they've conceded 1 try. Is that actually something to look back on and actually be pretty pleased with the way Ireland are defending? Granted, today was against Russia, and in the opening game of the tournament, Scotland offered very little, but on paper it is 1 try conceded in 3 games. Yeah,
if we look back to the England game and how many tries we gave up then, there's certainly been a lot of work gone into it, and it's been fairly pleasing how the defence has been. I mean, people are making the right decisions, they're making their tackles, they're not leaving too many guys through for line breaks, and that's Andy Farrell's stamp all over it. One thing Andy always wants from people is what he calls bounce, which means enthusiasm in defence. He wants you on the balls of your feet, pointing at people you're going to smash, and as much as a mental thing as a physical one.
Mm-hmm. I suppose the flip side then is that we're making a lot of defences look pretty good as well.
Yeah, I just remember against the Japanese game we did a few kind of crossfield kicks and they seemed to work well, and then we went away from it for whatever reason, and if we're struggling to generate momentum, that could be a good option.
Mm-hmm. I'll leave you go in a couple of minutes, Mike. Just a couple more messages to read out. Celtic Warrior, Conway has to start, the only back in form. Carl Sheen says, we are basically the box under Meyer. Such stupid decisions made constantly, nothing but brawn this and brawn that. Mark O'Callaghan, Aki was awful. Merstai, collectively we were poor again, unfortunately. Big Will says Ireland played poorly, but it is a bonus point win for them, which is what they needed. And Barry Clark, with confidence and morale low, I think Samoa will target this game and will struggle again. Unfortunately, I hope I'm wrong, but I have seen this before. And also as well, another one then on the front row, is Dave Kilcoyne done enough to get in ahead of Cian Healy? That is from Mike. I'm not sure, is it from Mike Ross now? He didn't give a second name.
Dave did play well, but I don't think Joe's going to change who he picks to start. He quite likes guys who add a lot of impact off the bench. I mean, look at Sean Cronin, the amount of caps he has, because he offers an injection of pace, an injection of power, and that's kind of how he likes to do things.
And like Dave Kilcoyne, I think he kind of is getting into that bracket of Sean Cronin, that he's almost so good off the bench. He has so much explosiveness in him, both when he has the ball and when he doesn't have it, that he does bring a huge amount to the game in around that kind of 50th minute. Yeah, and in fairness to him, he's probably playing some of the best rugby of his career. Oh, definitely, yeah, and Cian's no slouch in that department either. Yeah. So I think he just prefers to have Cian on for the first 50 and then leave Killer loose. Okay, so final couple of questions. Samoa next week, where's the confidence levels at? Should it be a bonus point victory based on what we've seen from Samoa? They looked a bit all over the place against Scotland the other night, and discipline is a massive issue for them as well. Would a major worry actually be just what could happen an Irish player out there? Samoa have been a little bit wild with some of their tackling lately.
Yeah, anytime I played against them, we knew them as a team of chiropractors, as exemplified by that talisman of theirs, Brian Lima, for years. So, look, they weren't very disciplined against Scotland, but one thing, most of those lads grew up with a rugby ball in their hands, so they're always very talented, just trying to harness that talent. Hopefully they won't do it for another week anyway, but whenever you play against Samoa, you feel it. You feel it in your bones. So I think if we get through that unscathed, we'll be lucky.
Mm-hmm. So then, if we get through that, obviously it is South Africa or New Zealand. What is the gut feeling before I leave you on either of those? How many more gears do Ireland actually have to find before they're at a level where they could, put a game up to South Africa or New Zealand in a quarter-final?
Well, the performance levels will have to go up. Either of those teams are a tremendous challenge. So we knew no matter where we finished in the pool, whether it's first or second, that it was going to be a tough quarter-final, and that hasn't changed. I think if things go, if we do finish top and play against South Africa, that's going to be heck of a physical encounter. From what I've seen in the box, the first 20 minutes against New Zealand was it was pretty inspiring stuff. But then New Zealand counterpunched them with 2 tries in a matter of minutes, which only New Zealand can do. So look. No matter.
I think my question, Mike, really is: do you want me to cut off your arm or your leg?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, right arm or right foot. but look, Ireland have proven time and time again that when you write them off, that's when you generally pull a big performance out of the bag. So, I think if we get to whoever we get in the quarterfinal, we can do a job.
All right, Mike, thanks a million for joining us, and we might get you on the show again a little bit later on over the next few weeks.
All right, thanks, Neil.
Take care, Mike. So that was Mike Ross joining us to look back on Ireland's at times uninspiring win against Russia this morning, 35-0. The bonus point landed, but still a lot to do for Ireland. At times, very much looking ordinary. 25 minutes in that middle third of the game without, never mind scoring, but barely landing a punch on Russia. A lot of turnovers, a lot of flat play, a lot to work on. Some more texts here. Ireland need to annihilate Samoa to give them a boost. They look like they're stuck in second gear at the moment. They need to play their best side against them. No more resting players. That's from Big Will. Ian Swan says Ruddock and Conway have been holding their hands up for a while. Should start both in the quarters. I think that's a very valid point as well, and something that Mike Ross was maybe not saying they should definitely be playing, but they are definitely putting their hands up. Steve-O says something that I'm not going to read out there, as they say in D4, and let's just say it rhymes with white. Conor Geraghty, handling the ball needs to improve. I know the conditions didn't help. They need to be a bit smarter with the ball. Shift Surge is saying Ireland have to learn how to attack, but there's no time, and that is the catch-22, that there is a lot of work-ons, as Joe Schmidt would say, but there isn't a lot of time to work on them. PJ Orr, good first half, shows the importance of Sexton night and day in comparison to Carty, who failed to control the game again. And finally, Gorilla Man says Sexton didn't have all that much of a great game, but maybe he didn't want to show his cards. I don't know, I think that was a little bit harsh. I thought Johnny Sexton actually did look relatively sharp in the first half. Changed the pace of the game quite a bit. Some nice kicking. A few grubbers went through as well. That one for Peter O'Mahony's try was good and just changed the direction of things. And I think he did bring a bit of control to that first half performance. And maybe it is no coincidence that when he went off in the second half that Ireland just started to look a little bit more disjointed. But we'll wait and see, because it sounds anyway like he's probably going to start again in the game against Samoa. Joe Schmidt saying that he's probably looking at giving him another 50 or 60 minutes in that game on Saturday week, the final game of the pool stage. And hopefully by then as well, Joey Carberry will at the very least be able to get 20 minutes under his belt, pulled out of the game before the match this afternoon. Conor Murray is brought onto the bench, but ultimately wasn't used. Joe Schmidt trying to give him a rest up after 2 big games for him over the last week or 10 days. Almost time for us to go. Just a couple of bits. First of all, we have been talking to Mike Ross here for the last little while, but we want to know, what does Ron Nogara think of the performance against Russia? Is he buzzing? Here's the latest of Rishtard's Rugger thing.
Off the ball rugby coverage in association with Vodafone. Everyone in Team of Us. Ronan Gar's on the line. Ronan, we're still reeling after the defeat by Japan. Things got back to relative normality, I guess, against Russia. Been quite a week. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's massive disappointment, obviously. But at least, I suppose, things got a bit better against Russia.
Sorry, Ronan, you still there?
Yeah, I am. I'm just thinking, Joe. Sorry, what did you ask me again?
Yeah, just about the Japan-Russia games. What did you make of them?
Oh yeah. That's a good question, Joe.
So.
Look, it's massive. Japan took their chances and dominated at ruck time, and they were faster and fitter and probably, stronger. But we've got to forget about it now, and it's over. It's gone, and hopefully Scotland will do us a favour, and we go through.
Did you see any of Scotland's game with Samoa?
No, I didn't see too much of that either, to be honest. Though, but I wouldn't be too worried about Samoa.
Yeah, why not?
It's a good question, Joe. I don't know.
Did you see any other games over the weekend?
I didn't, to be honest.
Yeah. What about the previous weekend?
No.
France, Argentina?
Bits of it.
New Zealand, South Africa?
Nah.
Ronan, do you actually like rugby?
Well, I suppose I might watch Ireland and Japan coming up.
Yeah, that game actually happened.
Oh yeah, well then I won't.
Great. Okay. Well, I think that puts the whole thing in perspective. Thanks, Ronan. Thanks for everything. That's the kind of insightful analysis we pay him all the lula for. We'll be back after these. Thanks, Ronan.
Richard's rugger thing.
On Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of Us. Everyone in.
Yeah, that was another Richard's Rugger thing. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Ronan. Richard's Rugger thing will be running throughout the Rugby World Cup. Just keep an eye on all of our social channels here at Off the Ball. Just to keep you up to date, a couple of bits of news as well. The games coming up over the next few days. South Africa versus Italy tomorrow morning, 10:45. Australia taking on Uruguay Saturday morning, 6:15 Irish time. We'll have England, Argentina. That looks like being the game of the weekend. Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. A win for England, and they are pretty much guaranteed their first place in that pool. Argentina need something pretty special. They're going to need to beat England realistically if they have any chance of getting through into that quarter final, having been beaten by France. On the team news for that, George Ford again at out half. They're going for the Ford-Farrell midfield combination. Owen Farrell in inside centre. Saturday's team, the same one that opened the tournament against Tonga, aside from George Cruz, who's brought in place of Courtney Laws. You can see that team up on your screen there. Ben Youngs will become England's third most capped player as well. He's going to earn his 92nd cap. So they're going to have Elliot Daly at full back, Anthony Watson and Johnny May in the wings, with Owen Farrell and Manu Tuolangi in the centres. George Ford and Ben Youngs in the half-backs, with the front row of Joe Marler, Jamie George and Kyle Sinclair, Maro Itoje and George Cruz in the second row, and Tom Curry, Sam Underhill and Billy Vunipola. That back row, which has looked really, really good so far over the first few games. Tom Curry having an absolute blinder over the last year or so. Still only 20 years of age, I think, as well. And then the likes of Mako Vunipola, I think he'll be making his first appearance of the tournament off the bench. And a lot of impact there. Dan Cole, Courtney Laws, Lewis Ludlam, Will Hines, Henry Slade and Jack Noble. pigeonhole as well. While Mario Ledesma, the Argentina head coach, he's opted for a major surprise. He's left Nicolas Sanchez out of that team for the must-win game. 77 caps, their top point scorer at the last World Cup. Not even in the replacements. Benjamin Urdapilleta, who's 12 caps in as many years, starts at number 10, the cast-out half. And Lucas Mensah providing cover on the bench, and Mario Ledesma so making a massive call for that game. And earlier this morning, Fiji claimed their first win of the World Cup with 6 second-half tries, saw them ease past Georgia. They took the lead through Waisaki Niaslevu, but Soso and Matiashvili's penalty reduced the deficit to just 4 points at half-time, and it was still very much game on. This, of course, a game of contrasting styles. Georgia, physical forwards, and Fiji, as we know, are just so beautiful with the ball in hand. And we saw that in the second half with second half tries. Josh Tuisova among them, and Semi Randraja is man of the match. An absolutely unbelievable display from him before Mamuka Gorgadze got a late consolation for Georgia. So it now looks like Fiji more than likely will be finishing third in that pool and qualifying directly for the next World Cup. But who knows, they still have to play Wales. Could they cause a shock? Being beaten by Uruguay already in the tournament, it would be very much like Fiji to just go out and beat a team like Wales next time round. But the rest of those games over the weekend, Japan and Samoa, is Saturday morning as well. That is 11:30 Irish time. One to note for Irish fans: New Zealand and Namibia at 5:45 on Sunday morning. And that is where we are going to leave it as well, because we can hear now from Namibia head coach Phil Davies. I spoke to him on Land of the Rising Scrum earlier this summer, and I was asking him about, the prospect maybe of Namibia getting their first win against Canada, their first ever win at a World Cup. They're taking on Canada next week, but before that, as we saw, they were beaten heavily by South Africa last week, and then a game against New Zealand. And we were discussing, how does a country like Namibia and a coach like Phil Davies even think about going into those games against two giants of the game? As well, like you mentioned, New Zealand and South Africa, they obviously stand out like a sore thumb in that pool, and you even chuckled yourself there mentioning it. Like, how in the name of God do you prepare a team, a tier 2 side who, as we mentioned, Uruguay and Russia are the only World Cup teams you would have played in the last 4 years. How do you go from that to preparing to taking on the 3 in a row chasing world champions and the side who won the tournament the time before that?
I think it's sort of get a bit of help from the man above, I think. But look, the beauty of being involved with the World Rugby program is and the beauty of the modern game is analysis. The analysis and the data that you can get now. So when you're preparing, we know that we've got to try to get our team fit and skillful to play maybe 40, 42 minutes ball in play in rugby, and I think that could go up to 45 in Japan, given the conditions and the surfaces, etc. Neil. So we know where we are, and it's trying to get us as fit and as skillful as we possibly can to go into that type of arena, and then just be as competitive as we possibly can, and see where we go. We know we're not going to beat New Zealand and South Africa, but like we did last time against New Zealand, we just want to come off the field, with our pride sort of intact, that we've given it everything we've got, and we move on to the next game, and that's what we're doing, in terms of the work we're putting in now. It's all, reference based in terms of, the analysis and the data we have available to us. So we know we're going somewhere. We're not sort of, it's not like it's not a flag in the wind sort of thing. We've got quite a structured program based around the metrics that we know other teams are achieving, and we've got to try and get up there,
Yeah, best of luck to Namibia and to Phil Davies this coming Saturday or Sunday against New Zealand. As big a challenge as you could possibly get, and you only hope they're able to just put their best foot forward and build on whatever comes from it against Canada next week and go for that first ever victory at a tournament. That's it from us this afternoon though on Off the Ball's Rugby World Cup show. There will of course be a lot more rugby coverage coming up throughout the day. We'll have reaction on Off the Ball's PM show this evening from 7 o'clock. Owen Sheehan busy working away at the moment in the Kobe Masaki Stadium, getting us the press conference audio so we can bring it to you later on, and I imagine the lads will probably be speaking to Owen as well at some point. As well as that, Keith Wood will be looking back on the game with Nathan, and there will of course be even more rugby reaction and preview coming up tomorrow morning on OTB AM with Adrian and the lads. So until then, we'll speak to you soon.
I'm Johnny Sexton, and you're listening to OTB AM.
The Rugby World Cup on OTB Sports Radio.